Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So first off, thank you to RPI for inviting the Young Ummah again. So I guess we didn't mess up the first time, that's why you invited us again, so thank you. And also a shout out to the brothers for coming to this, even though the title sounds very feminist-like. I assure you, inshallah, it will not be like that. So, first off, I have a question for you guys. What is empowerment? Because we're talking about women, of course, as you can see from the title, the legacy of the Muslimah, but it's a title that relates to everyone. So I kind of want to clear that misconception that the talk is just about women. So, does anyone want to just give some shout outs and some words? What do you think when you think of empowerment? I do have a cheat sheet here. I myself, I thought, okay, let's ask dictionary.com. What does dictionary.com think empowerment means? But any words that come to mind? Anyone? Yes.
Confidence.
Confidence. Okay.
Ambition.
Ambition. Independence. Okay. So our friend dictionary.com says empower means to give power or authority to, authorize, especially by legal or official means. So basically someone who has been empowered literally means that they were given power. Fair enough, right? So when we look at our current day and age, often when we see the word Muslimah or Muslim woman, do we hear the word empowerment? I mean, I personally don't. I see words like oppression and words that don't necessarily go with empowerment. But, I mean, we're just human beings, right? If we really think about, like, all the people that have power in this world, I mean, if Barack Obama was here right now talking to you guys, I assure you there would be so many more people, because that many people don't want to listen to me as they want to listen to Barack Obama. So that's because he has a lot of power, right? But that power is given to each other by us as humans. But in all honesty, isn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the one who actually gives power? And do we often seek power from God? Do we realize that God has given each and every one of us power? So then why do we focus so much on, like, why are women not empowered? Because ultimately God has empowered us, right? So I want to start off from the beginning, from where we started, with Adam and Eve's story. And I want to point out that God establishes equality from the start. So I have this verse or ayah in the Quran up on the screen, and it says, O mankind, fear your Lord, who created from one soul, and created from it its mate, and dispersed from both of them many men and women. And fear Allah, but who you ask one another in the wombs, indeed Allah is ever over you an observer. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He created us from one soul. And then from that one soul, He created from it its mate. He said mate. When we think mate, we think partner. Now again, this is like a translation, right? So the actual beauty of the Arabic sometimes gets lost in translation. But the point is like, do you see that sense of equality? Where He talks about how He created us from one soul. He could have left it at that, right? He could have just said He created us from Adam, moving on. But He didn't. He also brought in that Adam had a partner. So this establishes right from the start this sense of equality. Later on, from like the last khutbah that Prophet Muhammad gave, I don't know if many of you probably have read this hadith, but the Prophet said, all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over black, nor a black has any superiority over white, except by piety, taqwa, and good action. So, what does this emphasize? This emphasizes that it doesn't matter what gender you are, what color, race, socioeconomic background, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's eyes, we're all equal. The only way we get compared is by our taqwa. So, I think God made it pretty clear that we're all equal. So now talking specifically on the topic of women, since that's what this lecture is about, what is the status given to women in Islam? So I have this verse on the screen, one of my favorite verses, not that I should say I have favorite verses or anything, but I think it kind of encaptures in a nutshell the sense of equality. So Allah says, I will not allow the deeds of any one of you to be lost, whether you are male or female. Each is like the other in rewards. So again, He says whether you are male or female. And as we all know, every single letter and word in the Quran is there for a reason, right? Because we believe that the words in the Quran are God's words. So I think the picture is pretty clear, but just if we still haven't gotten it, I mean, I have a hadith here from Prophet Muhammad, and it says, a man asked the Prophet ﷺ, who is more entitled to be treated with best companionship by me? And the Prophet said, your mother, your mother, your mother, and then the man was like, okay, for the fourth time, who is next? And the Prophet then said, your father. Not to like demean the brothers or our fathers, I love my dad, but the point is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally gives so much emphasis, places so much emphasis and power on women. But do we necessarily see that when we look around us? Do we see that in our homes? Do we see that in our lives? I'm not going to answer that question. So then why is a woman's status in Islam always questioned? So, part of the problem really is our own perception. If we start off in our own homes, and we look at our mothers and fathers, we look at our brothers and sisters. Now again, I'm going to bash the brothers a little bit, especially since they're here, but how often does the son get told to do something as much as the daughter gets told? You know, how often do we hear, the sisters complaining versus the brothers complaining? Again, I'm not going to, just think of your own house. I'm not going to answer the question. But it all starts from our own homes. I know we're all college students, and pretty sure none of us are married in here, but inshallah, we hope to have our own families one day, and we will be mothers and fathers. And the point is that the way we are right now is how we're going to treat our children. So we have a legacy of people, inshallah, that are going to come from us. So our perceptions are going to translate into how the next generation is. You know how they say you are what you eat? Well, what we believe is what we become as well. So our perception is very important. Now to emphasize this more, I have two hadiths here. So Prophet Muhammad said, whoever from my ummah raises 3 daughters or 3 sisters and he gives them an Islamic upbringing, then those very daughters will become a shield for him from the fire of Jahannam. Now, if I was a boy, I would get a little jealous after reading this because, again, sisters are being, given a lot of respect. But do we necessarily see that in our homes? Especially not to pick on outside of America, but a lot of us, we come from parents who are immigrants and we go back and we look at their culture. Does the culture that we see in those countries necessarily correlate with what Islam has to teach us? Not often. And often that culture is taken as Islam, which is what we need to get past. I have another hadith here where Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet's wife, was asked, what did the Prophet used to do at home? And she replied, he would help his family, and when it came time for the prayer, he would pray. Now it sounds vague, but he would help his family. That's pretty important. And again, it emphasizes that it's not just, the woman doing everything. It has to be collaboration. There's always a sense of equality, right? We're different, but that doesn't mean that one has to be superior or one has to be inferior, right? It's not like, even with a lot of feminist arguments oh, the woman should be in charge of the men. It shouldn't be like that either. We're supposed to work together. So, I figured let's give some examples. Let's look at some of the women from our own history. So I'm going to take you guys back a couple 100,000 years. And we're going to start off with Maryam alayhi salam. So I think we all know the general story, but does somebody want to give a quick recap, Angel? Why is Maryam alayhi salam so important? Anyone? I know the sisters know. I don't know about the brothers. Yes?
Because she's the only woman that gave birth without a father.
Yes. Anything else? Guys, get the point.
And she's the mother of Jesus.
Yes, so she is the mother of Isa alayhi salam, or Jesus, and she gave birth to a child without any male intervention. And she is the only woman that's mentioned by name in the Quran and has a very large surah dedicated to her. So she has a lot of importance in Islam. And according to Bukhari Muslim, she achieved perfection in Iman, and she's the greatest woman of her time, according to Tirmidhi. But how often do we remember her? How often do we remember her purity, her chastity, what she had to go through? I can't even imagine what she had to go through. The ridicule she had to face, especially for not doing anything wrong. Like, that's just unimaginable. But we don't take the time to remember her as much. It's great to talk about the other companions and their stories, but I guess the point is that we need to talk about the woman as well. Okay, so now let's look specifically at the Prophet's time. Now, I was having trouble picking like what woman do I want to talk about for the Prophet's time, because they were pretty awesome, like superwomen during his time. But I'm going to start off with Hazrat Khadija. So Hazrat Khadija was the first wife of the Prophet, and she was also the first to accept Islam. But often we don't remember that she was a successful businesswoman. She was a strong, independent woman. And we don't remember that. We don't remember that she led her father's business, and that the Prophet worked for her, and that she was able to run a successful business even though during that society it was a very male-dominated society. I have a hadith on the board as well. It says, it's speaking from the Prophet's voice. It said, "She believed in me when no one else did. She accepted Islam when people rejected me. And she helped and comforted me when there was no one else to lend me a helping hand." So you guys know the story where, you know, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ received the first revelation, and what happened after that? Yes.
He returned home to Khadija, like shivering, and tell her like to put more covers on him.
Yes. So he came home and he thought he was crazy, basically, because he thought he was hearing voices. But what happened in that instance? If she wanted to, she could have been like, "Oh my God, I think my husband has lost it. I think we need to get a doctor in here." Like, you know, but she didn't do that. She believed in him. She listened to him. She comforted him. She showed emotional strength, right? Often, what do we think? Women are psycho. They're so emotional. This and that. Which, okay, we are a little emotional and we are psycho. I accept that. But the point is that we can also be emotionally strong. Then why do we always paint women as damsels in distress? You know? Because in this case, she was Superman for Prophet Muhammad, but we don't remember that. I have another example here. Nusayba bint Ka'b. So does anyone know who she is, first of all? Okay, so she was a female warrior. She fought in the Battle of Uhud, and she was present for multiple other monumental events, such as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and the Battle of Hunayn. But specifically during the Battle of Uhud, I have been asking the audience a lot, but does anyone want to say what happened in reference to the hill story? The Battle of Uhud? Okay, so basically during the battle, the Prophet had told his companions, "Do not move from this spot," okay? And out of excitement, because they thought they were winning, they moved. And right then, the enemy started attacking. So this woman was there to guard the Prophet and actually got hurt in the process. And she fought alongside whatever companions were left. She used the swords, she used the arrows, and she fought. But do we remember that? Do we know that there's actually female warriors that fought during that time? We don't. There's another account where, you know, she was, I would say, like the strong woman at the time, where she asked the Prophet, you know, why doesn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about women as much as he talks about men in the Quran? And right after that, this ayah came down. Now, as you can see, it's pretty long, so I'm not going to bore you guys with my voice and read the whole thing, but it says, "Indeed, the Muslim men and Muslim women, the believing men and believing women, the obedient men and obedient women." You guys get the gist. Every time the word men is mentioned, the word woman is mentioned. And the word men is mentioned 10 times in this ayah, and the word woman is also mentioned 10 times. So again, Allah, like, He creates the sense of equality between men and women, as shown by this ayah. So coming a little closer to our time, we're not still there yet, but did you guys know that the first university in the whole entire world was founded by a Muslim woman? I personally did not know this until few months ago, and then I thought I would include it in my presentation. But yeah, it was a Muslim woman who was born in Tunisia, and this university still exists today, and it's located in Fez, Morocco. So that's pretty empowering. So let's look at right now. What's going on right now? Well, the Olympics are right around the corner, and I don't know if you guys heard about Ittihad Muhammad, but she is an awesome fencer from what I've seen on YouTube. And she is going to be the first American Muslim hijabi to compete in the Olympics. And she had faced some backlash recently. An article was released how they refused to give her one of her medals unless she took her hijab off, and she's like, heck no, I'm not taking the hijab off. And then eventually they apologized and whatnot. But we actually have a hijabi woman going into the Olympics. That's pretty cool that we can live to see that. The first Muslim woman to receive a Nobel Peace Prize also happened in our day and age in 2003. And the first Muslim woman to go to space happened in 2006. These are all recent things, which is great. But at the same time, sometimes I want to ask, like, why didn't this happen earlier? You know? Like, later on, inshallah, when we all have kids and grandkids, they're going to look back and they're going to be like, oh yeah, 2003, whenever that was, 30, 40 years ago. But for us, that's like, you know, kindergarten or elementary school. Which is, it's still good that it happened, but why didn't it happen sooner? So that's what we have to change. Now, for those of you who know me, I'm kind of a physics nerd, and I did study physics in Siena before I came here, so of course I had to give a astrophysicist reference. So I don't know how many of you guys know, but gravitational waves was discovered recently, specifically in February. And so at Siena, I'm still on their email list for some reason, and whenever there's a discovery, all the physics professors send out like a mass email to all the physics majors, oh look, this is what happened, a Nobel Peace Prize was given for this. And I remember in February, the day my physics professor sent this out, and everyone was going bonkers over it. But there was no mention of a woman. It was, as always, it was just, oh, this was discovered by this man and his group. Now, she wasn't the head of the group, but she was one of the prominent scientists in the group, right? So why is it like that? You know, like the Watson and Crick model? I don't hear a female name of that, even though there was a female behind that. Or even with Einstein, there was a woman behind him. But do we remember these women? I didn't see her name until I researched her. And I was like, wait, she's the woman who discovered, or helped discover gravitational waves. And she's from MIT, which is pretty close by. So that's cool. So what's the point? The point is feeling like we're oppressed, because we're not. We just looked at it, right, in the Quran and Hadith. We're definitely not oppressed by Islam. And if we're oppressing each other, then that's what the problem is. And we need to change our perception. Because you can be awesome and you are awesome. So how can you make a difference? First of all, look at your own life. And this goes to me first, even though I'm a woman at the same time. Like, think about, how do we treat the woman in our lives? How do you treat your mother? How do you treat your sister? Do you treat them the same way that you treat your friends? Do you give them that respect that they deserve? Because that's where it starts. The way we treat our mothers and our sisters, that's how we're going to treat our daughters, and that's how they're going to expect men to treat them. It all goes in a cycle. So we have to empower each other. And we have to ask ourselves this question: what legacy will you leave? Because it's not just the legacy of the Muslimah. It's the legacy of all of us, our Ummah. Thank you. What do you guys think we can do, like, in general? Because, you know, I'm not talking at you, I'm talking with you, right? I'm also a student, and I see the same things you guys see. But can you guys think of, like, small things we can do to change that, to change this? Yeah.
I think the first thing to do, like, first and foremost, is to respect and love and take care of your mom. Because she's, like, basically the first in your life. So, that's like the one thing that's necessary. Otherwise, you can't do all the other stuff that you want to, like, empower you. You have to start from your mom and then go and branch out.
Exactly. Yes.
Maybe be more don't automatically under